Hey, welcome everybody. We're in Ezekiel chapter 7 tonight. As we start in this, you're going to continue to see, especially as our day grows more and more wicked and violent, you're going to see the parallels between our world and Ezekiel's world. Tonight I'm going to give you as a little overview at the very beginning of the chapter here. I called it in your notes the oracles of doom. And there's 4 oracles that come out. Verses 2 through 4 is the end has come. And you'll see that phrase that he says, this is the end has come. Now it's really interesting. It's like there's a pause right here. And kind of like you've seen in so many other prophetic scriptures, we know he's talking to Israel and to them in captivity. But it seems like we've kind of, to use a Star Trek term, we warped into hydrospace out there really fast to a future time that could be our time right now. The end has come. Verses 5 through 9 says the evil has come. Verses 10 and 11 says the day has come, singular, the day of the Lord, the day has come. And verses 12 through 13 says the time has come. Are you catching the theme here? It's all converging at this one point here in this. How interesting. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but chapters weren't really in the Bible when they were written. Man added the chapters in that. But how interesting that they added that this would be chapter 7 as you see the convergence, the completeness of all that's happening in the world of Ezekiel seems to be happening in our world today also. So let's jump right in. Ezekiel chapter 7, let's look at the first 6 verses here. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of Man, and for if this is the only one you catch us on YouTube here, Son of Man here is not referring to Jesus, it's referring to Ezekiel as son of dust, pointing back to Adam. So the word of the Lord came to me, Son of Man. This is what the sovereign Lord says to the land of Israel, the end. Exclamation point. Isn't that amazing? The end. So when God says this is the end, whoa, that's amazing right there. The end has come upon the 4 corners of the land. The end is now upon you, and I will unleash my anger against you. I will judge you according to your conduct and repay you for all your detestable practices. I will not look on you with pity. I will not spare you. I will surely repay you for your conduct and for the detestable practices among you. Second time he's telling them about what they've been doing, right? Then, here's the phrase that we talked about last week that he's going to say so many times throughout all of Ezekiel. Then you will know I am the Lord. Verse 5. This is what the sovereign Lord says. Disaster! Exclamation point. Unheard of disaster. See, it comes, and the end has come. The end has come. When you see this repetitive, it's going to tell you something here, and I'll share what that is in just a moment. It has roused itself against you. See, it comes. All right. This phrase here, and I chose the word here, terror, because it's sometimes a little more sobering than what I put in parentheses in your note. It's wrath. The terror of the Lord. The terror of the Lord is actually something that in the New Testament, Paul teaches on in 2 Corinthians 5:11, saying, knowing, therefore, the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. Knowing there is a fear of the Lord, there is the wrath of the Lord, we persuade men that he's going to bring justice, he's going to bring judgment someday. And so Paul says that's part of our argument. Now, in the old days when I was a kid growing up, we called that hell and fire and brimstone preaching, trying to scare them into heaven. We know fear doesn't work, but we left out some truth here. We made God the singular element of love, and here Paul in the New Testament is reaching back, I believe, to Ezekiel here in 2 Corinthians 5:11 and saying, knowing We know this. So therefore, we what? We try to persuade people to understand there is the wrath of God, the terror of the Lord. So in verse 2, here's where I feel like he kind of takes us way out here to our future when he says the end has come on the four corners of the land. Now that phrase is really the apocalyptic phrase of Revelation, where it's not limited just to Israel, but the four corners of the land. Are we saying just the four corners of Israel, or is that the four corners of the world that Jesus describes? Okay, is this the future? Many eschatologists believe that God is, remember, he's outside of time, so he can see the end from the beginning. And when he sees where Israel's at, he's saying that will also be true out here. And so he gives us a glimpse of that. Verses 5 and 6, we see this repetitiveness that's happened. Repetition establishes the witness to the event. Remember, the Jews understood that God had to at least have two witnesses for the event to be held up as justice in a court. So for God to bring wrath, he has to have several witnesses, and he himself is that witness here, with the repetitive part of the end has come, and he says that over and over here so that people go, well, were you really meaning the end? Yeah. So this is why I'm convinced, along with many of those scholars, that this is speaking more than just Ezekiel's day and the third wave that's going to come against Jerusalem. I believe that it's talking about the end of the age. The end of the age. Now, some commentaries will say it really is an end of the age when the third wave comes. It hasn't hit yet. Jerusalem hasn't been destroyed in the captivity of Babylon yet, at this point where this is being said. The temple will be destroyed. Many, many scholars believe from that first destruction of the temple, the presence of the Lord was never in the temple after that again. When they built the second temple. When they build the third temple, we know he's not in the Holy of Holies. Okay? So this is really a very interesting time. So some say the end, meaning is the end of him putting up with his people acting in, as he says several times, detestable practices and ways. All right. So we pick it up now in 7 through 12. In verse 7, doom has come upon you who dwell in the land. The time has come. The day is near. There is panic, not joy, on the mountains. I'm about to pour out my wrath on you and spend my anger against you. I will judge you according to your conduct. Third time he's brought up that, why the judgment's coming. And repay you for, third time, your detestable practices. You know, sometimes, when you have some speakers and orators where you go, okay, well, let's come up with a different word or whatever. I actually believe in the old Hebrew practice, he was saying, I want to make sure you know I'm not talking about something else. This is how I view it. Detestable. Well, is that kind of like you really don't care for it? No. He disdains what's going on here. You catch it? I will not look on you with pity. I will not spare you. I will repay you for your conduct. And it's almost like you could get the choir to say it here. And for your detestable practices among you. Wow. Then you will know, what? That it is I, the Lord, who strikes you. Who's doing the striking? This is not Babylon. This is not Mother Nature. This is not just some enemy that's rising up that they don't know about. The striking is coming from God. See the day. See it comes. Doom has burst forth. The rod has budded. Arrogance has blossomed. Violence has arisen. A rod to punish the wicked. None of the people will be left. None of the crowd. None of their wealth. Nothing of value. The time has come. The day has arrived. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller grieve, for my wrath is on the whole crowd. Whew. All right. Now, I want to talk to you in these verses, how doom works. And we're going to talk about it generally, and then we're talking also specifically about God's doom. All right? So how does doom work? Verse 7, it comes in a day. Now, sometimes that's Mother Nature. It does come in a day, where you wake up and the earthquake hit that day. The hurricane made land. A tornado dropped down. Doom can come in a day. This is not what we're talking about at all in this. Verse 8, God's doom is attached to what? Humanity's detestable practices. Do you catch how our world, not just the United States, but our world has fallen into the same kind of world that God is talking to in Ezekiel's time? That there isn't this reverence of God. There is what he's going to go on to describe, an arrogance. That's number 3 here, verse 10. As arrogance blossoms, doom burst forth. Ooh. Again, they're doing bad things, detestable things, things that God's saying, this is it. I've had my fill. But what burst forth the doom is the arrogance. We have really become an arrogant people in the 21st century. It's scary. Christians are even arrogant. Lord, help me not to be an arrogant man. Help me to, even when we are sharing the judgment of God that's coming, that it comes with a heart that says, I hope somebody's ear, somebody's heart, somebody's life catches this. Not, your time's coming, you deserved it. God actually has that kind of spirit here where he is saying, this is justice at this point. He's not doing it out of anger. That's a big difference. He's doing it out of wrath. Wrath is attached to something here. And you're going to see what it's attached to in the next couple verses. But verses 11 and 12 here, you are not protected from God's doom by your wealth or value. This doom has no boundaries. That's what those verses are saying. In 2008, though people that were wealthy took a hit, they were pretty much protected. If you had things of value, you lost a lot of value, but you still didn't have doom. This is different. That's why he goes right there. This wrath has no boundaries. No one's going to be able to escape and go, I had enough stored up. It's kind of cute because the Mormons, one of the things, I have many Mormons that are friends and several of them that I've actually led to the Lord and taught them the difference of our Jesus and their Jesus. And they say, well, I'm still storing up my 7 years. I said, well, there's nothing wrong with being prepared, but if you think you could store up, if you're going to be here, beyond what's coming, you're fooling yourself. Your best shelters, your best food things, and everything else, you will not be able to escape. How do I know that? Listen to how it describes it here in verses 13 through 20, and you'll see what I mean. The seller will not recover the property that was sold as long as both buyer and seller live. For the vision concerning the whole crowd will not be reversed because of their sins. Now, the NIV doesn't do justice to this here because the sins, you go, is it, again, just those practices? The word is actually in the Hebrew, iniquities. You know that's generational. This is not a short time. They've been just bad people for a short time. Iniquities means generational sin after generation. They've been living detestable, idolatrous. For hundreds of years, this is what's been happening to God's people. Okay, so because of their iniquities, not one of them will preserve their life. They have blown the trumpet, they have made all things ready, but no one will go into battle. For my wrath is on the whole crowd. Outside is the sword, inside are plague and famine. Those in the country will die by the sword, those in the city will be devoured by famine and plague. The fugitives who escape will flee to the mountains. Like doves of the valleys, they will all moan, each for their own iniquities. Again, the word sins there, iniquities. Every hand, remember the difference between sin and iniquity. The iniquity is your spirit doesn't anymore resonate that you've been a bad person. It's like, we've just lived this way. This is our world. We accept same-sex marriage. We accept that you're gay or lesbian, and that's just our world. And how dare those Christians say that could be evil? There was a psychologist and the group from Johns Hopkins Hospital just here not too long ago put an article out and said transgender is a mental illness and a disorder, and you are abusing their bodies and you're doing something that's impossible. You cannot change a man to a woman or a woman to a man. It's impossible. And when you do that kind of surgery, you've made them 20% higher for suicide because it's a hopeless situation. It's a mental disorder, a displacing in their mind about their body, and they need help. The gay and lesbian communities ticked off like crazy. Why? Because they don't believe that. Their minds are the same place as where Ezekiel people's minds are. Okay, here we go. Let's pick it up in verse 17. Every hand will go limp. Every leg will be wet with urine. That's very descriptive. They will put on sackcloth and be clothed with terror. Every face will be covered with shame, and every head will be shaved. If you don't remember this, a head shaved is a sign of shame also. It's a sign that you're in a bad place. They will throw their silver into the streets, and their gold will be treated as a thing unclean. Just that little part of it again takes you way out there to Revelation, where a piece of bread could buy a bag of gold. Because remember, famine is one of the things that God's wrath is going to be bringing. So a piece of bread could buy a whole bag of gold because the gold's no good to you. And that's what he's describing here. So that's why in the deep description of this, there's the double, this is a reality for Ezekiel's day, but a double prophecy for us in the future also. Okay? Their silver and gold will not be able to deliver them. In the day of the Lord's wrath, it will not satisfy their hunger or fill their stomachs, for it has caused them to stumble into, again the word is, iniquities. They took pride in their beautiful jewelry and used it to make their detestable idols. They made it into vile images. Therefore I will make it a thing unclean for them. Wow. All right. If you notice your notes here, this is what, when God describes the 7 terrible years, he does this. He says, man has never experienced it at this level. Now, regional parts of the world have experienced very bad levels. But what we're seeing is a description here that goes to all the corners of the world. This is we really believe describing the 7 terrible years that what I put in your notes headings there, no ability to cope. So number 1, it's a universal despair. Number 2, those in the field, if you go, I'm out in the field, I'm in the rural parts, you're at war. Those in the city, you're dying with famine and pestilence. Even those who flee, number 3, even those who flee to the mountains will feel the weight of their sin. It says they will moan. They know there's no help. There's no ability to cope. They haven't gotten out of anything. They're just going to die in the mountains instead of in the city. Number 4, no pride is left. No self-reliance will sustain them. This is God humbling a world. Not just a people, but a world. In this day of Ezekiel, it was the humbling of a nation and a world. The scary thing is, this could be true for America before it is for the world. Because we have raised up in the greatest arrogance towards God that he could make the example of the United States before the rest of the world sees it. It's almost like, here's a glimpse of your future, world, and what he does to America could be the testimony of that. Now, I personally believe he takes his bride out before. Would you want your bride to go through that kind of time? No. All right. So, and why does he say he's the bridegroom? He's coming for his bride. If you don't know the scriptures, I did it in my minute for the word today. Luke 21, verse 36. Watch and pray that you may escape all that is about to happen. And that whole chapter, he just went through many of these things that we're hearing in Ezekiel. The sun, moon, and stars are going to give signs. The world's going to be in terror. The world's gone crazy. People are against one another. And it's an evil, evil day with wickedness abounding. And watch and pray that you may escape. There's the good news right there. All right. So, no pride left. Now, that was really what God took Israel down to. The scary part is there's a verse in Revelation that says, with as much wrath that God pours out on the world, the arrogance, though, stays there in those that are totally wicked. That they don't go, Uncle, I give up, God. You are God. I know you've brought all this on. That they are so wicked and they hate God so much that they stay in their arrogance and say, we're in a battle with you. We're fighting against you. And so in the weird part of it is, here's where eschatology can really get weird on the map, is that they believe that they have actually enlisted to be on the side of Satan, the Antichrist, the false prophet, against God. That's why no matter what God brings to them, they just see it as part of their battle, and they're against God, wanting to defeat God himself. Really weird stuff, huh? All right, verses 21 through 27, here we go. I will give their wealth as plunder to foreigners. Now, remember I told you earlier, it's very, very important. He kept on saying, I'm going to repay you for your conduct. This is where the repayment is in this whole segment. So watch how this builds a principle that Paul will teach the church in the New Testament. Okay? Verse 21, I will give their wealth as plunder to foreigners, and as loot to the wicked of the earth who will defile it. I will turn my face away from the people, and robbers will desecrate the place I treasure. They will enter it and will defile it. Now, Jack, you sent me a thing earlier and said, Articius of Epiphanes, when he defiles the temple, is that foretold back there? Was this? How could he go into the Holy of Holies? That's why we believe he can, because of this prophecy before the temple is destroyed for the first time is a prophecy that his spirit's not going to be there. It's not going to dwell with Israel. And they're still playing church religion temple religion, really, and that this right here, Scripture, is the fulfillment of out there when Articius of Epiphanes does what he does and desecrates the temple, the second temple. So here's the foundation of what you texted me earlier this week. Just thought I'd point that out to you. All right, let's see if I can find where I was at now. All right, verse 22. I will turn my face away from the people, and robbers will desecrate the place I treasure. They will enter it and will defile it. Prepare chains, for the land is full of bloodshed, and the city is full of violence. I will bring the most wicked of nations to take possession of their houses. I will put an end to the pride of the mighty, and the sanctuaries will be desecrated. When terror comes, they will seek peace in vain. Calamity upon calamity will come, and rumor upon rumor. They will go and search for a vision from the prophet. Priestly instruction in the law will cease, and the council of elders will come to an end. The king will mourn, the prince will be clothed with despair, and the hand of the people of the land will tremble. I will deal with them according to their conduct. Now he brings it full circle. And by their own standard, I will judge them. Then they will know that I am the Lord. That's why, as you could see, you know the principle that Paul's teaching out there. You saw it in your notes, sowing and reaping. What they've sown all this time, he says, I'm going to measure it back to you. By their own standard is what he tells them in these verses here. I will judge them. Bloodshed will reap bloodshed and violence. A more wicked nation, they're wicked, but a more wicked nation will be brought to take their possessions, their homes, their houses. So they're wicked, and he brings greater wickedness to take over Israel at this time. And so this is the principle here in God's wrath, that many of the things that the world will reap out there in the future are things that they've already sowed today. Are you catching that? So important in the parallels here, that God's not just bringing wrath as judgment. He's allowing your consequences. What you've sowed, you are finally going to reap. If you've sowed that you're against God, God's going to let everything else be against you. If you've sown violence, violence is going to come your way. So those that say, well, what's God going to do about violence and the wickedness of the world? Tell them to read Ezekiel chapter 7. I think they'll get a clear picture of what it's all about.